The massive alien ship hung in space just beyond Earth's moon, like a silver needle against the black void. Ambassador Zethkari of the Voltan Empire stood on the bridge, watching the blue planet turn slowly below them. This was his 15th visit to the third planet of the Sol system, and like all the others before it would end in silence. The humans never responded to diplomatic messages. They never sent representatives to meet with galactic envoys. They acted as if the rest of the universe simply did not exist. Zethkari found this behavior both puzzling and insulting. Every other species in the galaxy had jumped at the chance to join the Galactic Council when first contact was made. The benefits were obvious. Trade partnerships brought wealth. Technology sharing advanced civilizations by centuries. Mutual defense pacts provided security against hostile forces. But Earth remained stubbornly quiet. On the planet's surface, Admiral Jake Morrison sat in his office deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, reading the latest intelligence report about alien activity near Earth. The report was detailed and thorough because humanity had been watching the aliens for over 20 years. Every ship that entered the solar system was tracked. Every transmission was intercepted and decoded. Every diplomatic envoy was observed from the moment they arrived until they departed in frustration. President Lisa Carter knew exactly what the aliens wanted. She had read every message they sent and studied every proposal they made. The Galactic Council painted itself as a peaceful organization dedicated to fostering cooperation between species. Their charter spoke of equality and mutual respect. Their representatives always arrived with smiles and gifts and promises of technological advancement. But Carter had also read the classified reports that told a different story. Human intelligence agents had spent decades gathering information about how the Council really operated. They had learned about species that joined willingly only to find themselves stripped of their independence. They had discovered worlds that were slowly drained of resources under the guise of fair trade agreements. They had uncovered evidence of civilizations that were quietly absorbed into the Council's expanding empire. The Council's pattern was always the same. First came the diplomatic overtures and promises of partnership. Then came the trade agreements that seemed beneficial, but always favored Council interests. Next came the gradual introduction of Council advisors and observers who slowly took control of key decisions. Finally came complete integration where the new member species found themselves nothing more than another province in the Council's vast domain. Earth would not walk willingly into that trap. Dr. Amy Foster worked late, into the night in her laboratory beneath the lunar surface. Her team had been reverse engineering alien technology for 15 years and the results were remarkable. Human scientists had taken Council designs and improved them in ways their original creators never imagined. The aliens thought they were dealing with a primitive species that had barely mastered rocket propulsion. They had no idea that human technology had already surpassed theirs in several key areas. Commander Ryan Hayes piloted his ship through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The UES Shadowhawk was invisible to alien sensors thanks to quantum cloaking technology that humanity had developed in secret. Hayes and his crew had spent months observing Council ships as they conducted routine patrols through human space. The aliens were mapping the solar system and cataloging its resources, but they saw only what humanity wanted them to see. Hidden bases on the Moon and Mars remained undetected. Mining operations in the asteroid belt appeared to be nothing more than natural rock formations. The massive shipyards orbiting Jupiter's moons were completely invisible to Council scanners. Humanity had learned to hide in plain sight while building the foundations of an interstellar civilization. Captain Ben Rodriguez commanded one of 50 stealth reconnaissance vessels that operated throughout the galaxy. His ship had visited over 100 Council worlds and observed their military installations firsthand. The intelligence gathered by these missions painted a clear picture of Council capabilities and weaknesses. Human strategists knew exactly what they would face if diplomacy ever failed and conflict became inevitable. The aliens saw Earth as an isolated world, populated by 7 billion primitives who lacked faster-than-light travel. They believed humans were trapped in their own solar system with crude chemical rockets and basic orbital stations. Council intelligence estimates suggested that Earth's entire military force consisted of a few dozen orbital platforms and perhaps 100 small spacecraft. They were wrong by several orders of magnitude. General Patricia Williams reviewed deployment schedules for the Terran Defense Force from her command center on Luna Base. The TDF consisted of over 800 ships ranging from small patrol vessels to massive dreadnoughts capable of devastating entire fleets. These ships were stationed throughout the solar system and beyond, but remained hidden from alien observation through advanced stealth technology. The Council had made a fundamental error in assuming that silence meant weakness. They interpreted Earth's lack of response as evidence of primitive development, rather than careful preparation. Human leaders had watched other species make the mistake of rushing into galactic politics without understanding the true nature of what they were joining. Earth would not repeat those errors. Colonel Steve Morgan led a team of intelligence operatives who had infiltrated Council space using ships disguised as asteroid miners and merchant vessels. These agents had established contact with resistance movements on dozens of worlds where local populations had grown tired of Council rule. The reports they sent back confirmed what human leaders had suspected. The Council maintained power through careful manipulation and economic control rather than direct military force. They preferred to let member species believe they retained their independence while slowly assuming control of all major decisions. President Carter knew that Earth's isolation could not last forever. Eventually, the Council would lose patience with diplomatic overtures and move to more direct methods of persuasion. Intelligence reports suggested that such a decision was already being debated in Council chambers. Some members advocated for placing Earth under protective custody as a primitive species. Others wanted to simply annex the solar system and deal with human resistance later. Either way, the time for silence was running out. Admiral Morrison received regular updates on alien fleet movements throughout the galaxy. Council military forces were being quietly repositioned and reinforced. New ships were being constructed at an accelerated pace. All signs pointed to a major operation being planned against Earth within the next few months. Humanity was ready. The aliens thought they were dealing with a backward species that could be easily intimidated or conquered. They had no idea that Earth had been preparing for this confrontation for over 2 decades. When the Council finally decided to act, they would discover that the silent planet had been anything but passive during its long years of apparent isolation. The Galactic Council chamber on Kepler Prime buzzed with frustrated conversation as representatives from 347 species debated what to do about the stubborn humans of Earth. Senior Counselor Vextar of the Hegemony stood at the central podium addressing the assembled delegates with barely concealed anger in his voice. 25 years of diplomatic outreach had yielded nothing but silence from the third planet of the Sol system. Every message sent to Earth went unanswered. Every ambassador returned with reports of being completely ignored. The humans acted as if the galactic community simply did not exist, despite clear evidence that they possessed the technology to receive and understand Council communications. Vextar's proposal was simple and direct. If Earth continued to ignore diplomatic contact, they would be officially classified as a non-responsive primitive species. This classification would allow the Council to place their star system under protective custody. Resource extraction rights would be granted to Council member species. Orbital monitoring stations would be established to observe human development. Eventually, the humans would be brought into the galactic community through guided evolution, under Council supervision. Ambassador Zeth Kari listened to the debate with growing unease. He had personally led more diplomatic missions to Earth than any other Council representative. The humans puzzled him in ways that no other species ever had. Their technology appeared advanced enough for interstellar travel, yet they showed no interest in exploring beyond their own solar system. Their communications networks were sophisticated, but they never broadcast messages to other star systems. They built impressive orbital installations but used them only for local purposes. The vote on Vexitar's proposal proceeded quickly through the Council chambers. 340 delegates voted in favor of placing Earth under Council protection. Only 7 voted against the measure. The humans had 6 months to respond to a final diplomatic ultimatum before protective custody would be implemented by force if necessary. Captain Ben Rodriguez watched the proceedings from his hidden position at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. The UES Shadowhawk remained invisible to Council sensors as its crew recorded every word of the debate about Earth's future. Rodriguez felt a mixture of anger and satisfaction as he listened to the aliens discuss humanity as if they were children who needed guidance from their betters. The aliens had no idea what they were really dealing with. Rodriguez sent an encrypted transmission to Luna Base Command as soon as the vote concluded. The message traveled through a network of hidden relay stations that allowed near-instantaneous communication across vast distances. Human scientists had developed quantum entanglement communication technology years ago, while the Council still relied on faster-than-light radio transmissions that could be intercepted and decoded. General Patricia Williams received the intelligence report within hours of the Council vote. She immediately contacted President Carter with the news that Earth had officially become a target for forced integration into the galactic community. The President's response was calm and measured, despite the gravity of the situation. Protocol 7 was activated across all human settlements and military installations throughout the galaxy. The protocol had been developed years ago as a contingency plan for exactly this situation. Hidden bases began final preparations for revealing themselves. Military forces moved into position for the largest operation in human history. Advanced weapons systems that had been secretly developed and tested were brought online and made ready for deployment. Dr. Amy Foster worked around the clock in her laboratory beneath Mare Imbrium as her team completed final adjustments to the most advanced weapons humanity had ever created. Plasma cannons that could punch through any known shield technology. Missile systems with warheads powerful enough to destroy entire fleets. Energy weapons that operated on principles the Council had never discovered. Every piece of equipment was tested and retested to ensure perfect performance when the moment of truth arrived. Commander Ryan Hayes led a squadron of stealth ships as they began evacuating hidden human installations throughout Council space. Forward Base Alpha in the Kepler 442 system had operated undetected for over a decade while observing Council military activities. Now the base had to disappear completely before alien scout ships arrived to investigate the system more thoroughly. The evacuation proceeded with precision timing that had been rehearsed countless times. Every piece of equipment was either removed or destroyed. Every trace of human presence was carefully eliminated. When the base finally phased out of normal space, using quantum displacement technology, it left behind nothing but empty planets and natural resources. The Council scouts would find exactly what they expected to find and nothing more. Colonel Steve Morgan commanded the 1st Stealth Brigade as they prepared for the most dangerous mission any human military unit had ever undertaken. His 50 ships would position themselves throughout Council space ready to strike at key installations if the situation escalated to open warfare. Each ship carried enough firepower to devastate multiple targets and enough stealth capability to escape before enemy forces could respond. The aliens still believed Earth was defended by nothing more than a few primitive orbital platforms and a handful of chemical rockets. Council intelligence estimates suggested that human military forces could be overwhelmed by a single battle group of Council ships. Military planners on Kepler Prime were already discussing how to minimize casualties among the primitive humans when protective custody was implemented. Admiral Jake Morrison reviewed final deployment orders for the Terran Defense Force from his command center deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Over 1,000 ships were moving into position throughout the solar system in preparation for the Council's arrival. The fleet represented 30 years of secret construction and technological development. Each ship was more advanced than anything in the Council's arsenal, and crewed by personnel who had trained their entire careers for this moment. President Carter spent her final days of apparent isolation meeting with key advisors and military leaders. The decision to reveal humanity's true capabilities had not been made lightly. Once the secret was exposed, there would be no going back to the comfortable anonymity that had protected Earth for so long. But the alternative was subjugation under Council rule and the slow absorption of humanity into an alien empire. The Council's ultimatum arrived exactly 6 months after the vote as promised. The message was broadcast on all frequencies and transmitted directly to every government on Earth. Humanity had 30 days to send representatives to Kepler Prime to begin negotiations for integration into the galactic community. Failure to comply would result in the implementation of protective custody measures for the good of all species involved. The transmission was received and decoded at facilities around the world, but no response was sent. Earth maintained its silence just as it had for 25 years. Council representatives interpreted this as further evidence of primitive stubbornness, or perhaps an inability to understand the gravity of their situation. They would learn the truth soon enough. Admiral Morrison issued final orders to fleet commanders throughout human space. The Council would arrive in 30 days expecting to intimidate a backward world into submission. Instead, they would face the full might of an interstellar civilization that had been preparing for this confrontation for decades. The age of Earth's silence was about to end in the most dramatic way possible. The truth about humanity's expansion into the galaxy was staggering in scope and breathtaking in its audacity. For 30 years, Earth had been building an interstellar civilization right under the noses of the Galactic Council using technology that rendered human activities completely invisible to alien sensors. Quantum phase drives allowed ships to slip in and out of normal space at will. Advanced cloaking systems made entire fleets disappear from any known detection method. Sophisticated stealth colonies operated on dozens of worlds without leaving any trace that alien observers could detect. Commander Ryan Hayes supervised the final evacuation of Forward Base Alpha as Council scout ships approached the Kepler 442 system. The base had served as humanity's primary intelligence gathering station in this sector for over 12 years. Its advanced sensor arrays had monitored Council military communications throughout the region, while its research facilities analyzed captured alien technology and developed countermeasures against Council weapons systems. Now the entire installation had to vanish without leaving behind any evidence of human presence. The evacuation proceeded with clockwork precision as teams dismantled equipment and loaded it aboard transport ships that phased in and out of normal space like ghosts. Critical data was transmitted to secure facilities in other star systems, while less important materials were simply destroyed to prevent any possibility of discovery. The base's quantum phase generator activated for the final time, and the entire complex shifted out of normal space into a parallel dimension where Council sensors could never detect it. When alien scouts arrived hours later, they found nothing but empty planets and untapped mineral resources, exactly as their long-range surveys had predicted. Dr. Amy Foster worked frantically in the weapons development laboratories beneath Mare Imbrium as her team completed final testing on the most advanced military technology humanity had ever created. The plasma cannon prototypes could punch through Council shields like they were made of paper. The new missile guidance systems could track targets across multiple phase shifts. The energy beam weapons operated on quantum principles that Council scientists had never even theorized about. Every piece of equipment had been designed and built in complete secrecy, using resources gathered from hidden mining operations throughout human space. Asteroid mining facilities disguised as natural rock formations provided rare metals needed for advanced electronics. Gas giant processing stations that appeared to be nothing more than atmospheric research probes supplied exotic materials for quantum drive components. Even the research facilities themselves were hidden beneath the surfaces of moons and planets, where Council sensors could never detect them. Foster's team had reverse-engineered and improved upon every piece of Council technology they could get their hands on. Human scientists had a talent for taking alien designs and pushing them far beyond their original specifications. Weapons that Council engineers considered powerful were merely starting points for human improvements. Shield generators that represented cutting-edge alien technology were rebuilt into defensive systems that could withstand punishment no Council weapon could deliver. Colonel Steve Morgan led the 1st Stealth Brigade as they positioned themselves throughout Council space for the most ambitious military operation in human history. His 50 ships had spent months infiltrating alien territory, using quantum cloaking that made them completely invisible to Council detection methods. Each vessel carried enough firepower to devastate multiple targets and enough advanced technology to escape before enemy forces could even realize they were under attack. The brigade's mission was twofold: First, they would observe Council military responses, when humanity finally revealed itself, and gather intelligence on alien capabilities under actual combat conditions. Second, they would be ready to strike at key Council installations if the situation escalated beyond diplomatic confrontation into open warfare. Morgan's ships could cripple Council communications networks and destroy major shipyards before the aliens even knew they were under attack. The Council had no idea that human ships had been operating in their territory for over a decade. Stealth reconnaissance missions had mapped every major alien installation and identified weaknesses in their defensive systems. Human intelligence operatives had established contact with resistance movements on dozens of Council worlds where local populations had grown tired of alien rule. Some species were ready to revolt if they had powerful allies to support their independence movements. Captain Dan Clark commanded a squadron of exploration vessels that had established 17 hidden human colonies throughout the galaxy. Each settlement was carefully chosen for its strategic value and natural resources, while remaining completely undetectable to Council survey missions. Advanced terraforming technology allowed humans to make hostile worlds habitable in a fraction of the time required by conventional methods. The colonies were more than just settlements. They were fully functional industrial and military bases, capable of supporting large populations and producing everything needed for sustained operations far from Earth. Shipyards around distant stars built vessels using designs that incorporated the best of human engineering and captured alien technology. Research facilities developed new technologies by combining human creativity with alien scientific knowledge. Most importantly, the colonies served as proof that humanity was not confined to a single world as the Council believed. Earth was merely the center of an expanding civilization that had already spread across significant portions of the galaxy. The aliens who thought they were dealing with a primitive planetary species would soon discover that they faced an interstellar power that had been growing in strength and capability for decades. General Patricia Williams coordinated the largest military deployment in human history from her command center on Luna Base. The Terran Defense Force consisted of over 1,000 ships ranging from small patrol vessels to massive dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything in the Council fleet. These ships had been built in secret shipyards throughout the solar system using advanced construction techniques that allowed rapid production of highly sophisticated vessels. The fleet represented 30 years of preparation and technological development. Human engineers had designed ships that were faster, more maneuverable, and more heavily armed than their Council counterparts. Advanced armor systems could withstand direct hits from alien weapons, while sophisticated shield generators provided multiple layers of protection. Quantum drive systems allowed human ships to appear and disappear at will, making them nearly impossible to target effectively. Admiral Jake Morrison reviewed deployment schedules that would position human forces throughout known space within days of the final confrontation. The plan called for revealing humanity's true capabilities through a show of force so overwhelming that the Council would have no choice but to acknowledge Earth as an equal, rather than a primitive species to be absorbed. Every major alien installation would find itself within range of human weapons. Every Council fleet would discover that it was outnumbered and outgunned. President Lisa Carter made final preparations for the most important diplomatic communication in human history. When the Council arrived expecting to intimidate a backward world into submission, they would instead face a message from the leader of an advanced interstellar civilization. Carter's speech would reshape galactic politics by demonstrating that humanity had been watching and learning while remaining hidden from alien observation. The revelation would come as a complete shock to Council leadership who had built their power on the assumption that they were the dominant military force in the galaxy. The discovery that a supposedly primitive species had been operating under their noses for decades would shatter their confidence and force them to reconsider their entire approach to galactic governance. Dr. Foster completed final quality checks on the weapon systems that would soon be revealed to an unsuspecting galaxy. Human technology had advanced far beyond anything the Council possessed, through a combination of innovative research and careful study of alien capabilities. The weapons aboard human ships could destroy Council vessels before their crews even realized they were under attack. The moment of truth was approaching rapidly. Soon the galaxy would learn that Earth's long silence had not been a sign of weakness or ignorance, but rather the patient preparation of a species that refused to be conquered or controlled by anyone. The Council protection fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, with the confidence of a superior force preparing to discipline unruly children. Admiral Kethvar of the Hegemony commanded 60 ships that represented the largest military force the Council had ever assembled for a protective custody operation. Intelligence reports suggested that Earth's primitive defenses could be overwhelmed by a single battle group, but Council leadership had decided to send an overwhelming force to minimize casualties among the backward humans. Kethvar stood on the EU bridge of his flagship, studying tactical displays that showed exactly what Council intelligence had predicted. Earth appeared to be defended by nothing more than a handful of orbital stations and perhaps a dozen small patrol craft. The primitive humans had made no attempt to establish defensive positions throughout their star system or even around their own planet. It would be a simple matter to demonstrate Council superiority and convince the humans to accept protective custody without bloodshed. The Admiral was composing his surrender demand when every sensor on every ship in his fleet went completely insane. 1,000 human warships decloaked simultaneously in Earth orbit. The massive vessels appeared out of nowhere like ghosts materializing from another dimension. Council sensors that had detected nothing but empty space moments before now registered the largest military fleet any of them had ever seen. The human ships were sleek and advanced with weapon signatures that made no sense according to established galactic technology. Energy readings suggested firepower levels that should have been impossible for ships of their size. Admiral Kate Brooks stood on the bridge of the UES Leviathan watching Council ships struggle to process what they were seeing. Her flagship was 3 times larger than the biggest Council vessel and bristled with weapons that could reduce entire fleets to cosmic dust. The Leviathan alone carried more firepower than the entire Council protection force, but it was only one ship among 1,000 that had just revealed themselves to a galaxy that thought humanity was primitive. Brooks opened a communication channel that broadcast across all galactic frequencies with crystal-clear precision. Her voice was calm and professional as she delivered a message that would change interstellar politics forever. This is Admiral Brooks of the Terran Space Navy. You are trespassing in human territory. You have 60 seconds to reverse course and depart our system, or you will be removed by force. The transmission reached every Council ship simultaneously despite being broadcast from a distance that should have required several minutes for radio signals to cross. Human quantum communication technology allowed instantaneous contact across any distance, but the Council had no idea such technology was even possible. Their own faster-than-light communications required specialized relay networks and still took significant time to cross interstellar distances. Kethvar stared at his sensor readings in complete disbelief. The human fleet was not just larger than his own force, but appeared to be technologically superior in every measurable way. Human ships showed energy signatures that exceeded anything in Council databases. Their shield generators operated on principles that Council scientists had never discovered. Their weapon systems appeared capable of delivering devastating attacks at ranges that made effective retaliation impossible. Admiral Jake Morrison coordinated the deployment of Terran forces throughout the solar system from his command center, deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Battle groups took positions around every planet and major asteroid. Fighter squadrons launched from hidden bases on the Moon and Mars that had remained invisible to Council sensors for decades. The asteroid belt itself came alive with military installations that revealed themselves for the first time since their construction began 30 years earlier. The Sol system transformed from an apparently primitive single-planet civilization into the heavily fortified capital of an advanced interstellar empire. Massive weapons platforms emerged from concealment on dozens of moons and asteroids. Orbital shipyards that had been completely invisible to alien observation suddenly appeared around Jupiter and Saturn, bristling with partially completed vessels that dwarfed anything the Council had ever built. President Lisa Carter finally responded to 25 years of ignored diplomatic messages with a transmission that reached every corner of the galaxy within minutes. The United Earth government acknowledges the Galactic Council's communications. Our response is the fleet currently aimed at your ships. Earth declines your invitation to join your organization. Earth also declines your permission to exist in our star system. You will leave now. The message was broadcast in perfect council standard, along with flawless translations into the primary languages of every major species. Human linguists had spent decades studying alien communications and could speak with native fluency in over 300 galactic languages. The council delegates who had dismissed humanity as primitive suddenly realized they were dealing with a civilization that had been studying them far longer than they had been studying Earth. Council ships throughout the solar system found themselves surrounded by human vessels that had appeared from nowhere. Every alien vessel was outnumbered by at least 10 to 1 and outgunned by an even larger margin. Human ships used quantum phase technology to move instantly from one position to another, making it impossible for Council forces to predict their movements or target them effectively. Captain Ben Rodriguez led a squadron of stealth fighters as they demonstrated human capabilities without firing a single shot. His ships phased in and out of normal space around Council vessels like ghosts dancing through a graveyard. The aliens could track human ships on their sensors, but could not lock weapons onto targets that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The demonstration lasted exactly 60 seconds before every human ship in the solar system simultaneously targeted every Council vessel with enough firepower to vaporize the entire alien fleet. Targeting locks appeared on Council tactical displays showing that human weapons were aimed at critical systems throughout their ships. The message was clear, without requiring translation. The humans could destroy the entire Council force before any alien ship could return fire. Admiral Kethvar had faced combat situations throughout his long military career, but had never encountered anything like the overwhelming technological superiority that humanity had just demonstrated. His fleet was completely outmatched by opponents who had appeared from nowhere and revealed capabilities that exceeded Council understanding of what was scientifically possible. The Admiral issued retreat orders to his entire fleet, knowing that his military career was effectively over. Council leadership would demand explanations for how their intelligence estimates had been so catastrophically wrong. Heads would roll throughout the intelligence services and military planning departments. The fundamental assumptions that guided Council policy would have to be completely reconsidered. General Patricia Williams watched from Luna Base as the Council fleet began its withdrawal from human space. The aliens were moving slowly and carefully, while constantly scanning for additional human forces that might be hidden throughout the system. They had no way of knowing that what they had seen was only a fraction of humanity's true military capability. The real Terran Defense Force consisted of over 3,000 ships stationed throughout human space, with additional vessels under construction in shipyards that spanned 17 star systems. The fleet that had revealed itself at Earth was impressive, but represented less than half of humanity's total military strength. The rest remained hidden and ready to respond if the Council decided to escalate the confrontation. Dr. Amy Foster monitored weapon systems throughout the human fleet as Council ships departed the solar system. Every human vessel was armed with technology that surpassed anything the aliens possessed, but the weapons had not been fired. The demonstration of overwhelming force had achieved its objective without requiring actual combat. Sometimes the most effective weapon was the one that never needed to be used. The Council protection fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel as soon as they reached the edge of the solar system. Behind them, they left a galaxy forever changed by the revelation that humanity was not a primitive species, waiting to be absorbed into alien civilization, but rather an advanced interstellar power that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The age of Council dominance was over before most of the galaxy even realized it had ended. The Council fleet's retreat from Earth sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy as news of humanity's overwhelming technological superiority spread across interstellar communication networks. Emergency sessions convened on dozens of worlds as military analysts struggled to understand how their intelligence estimates had been so catastrophically wrong. The species they had dismissed as primitive cave dwellers had revealed themselves to be an advanced interstellar civilization with military capabilities that exceeded anything the Council possessed. Admiral Kate Brooks received new orders from Earth High Command within hours of the Council fleet's departure. The Terran Space Navy would begin the next phase of operations designed to demonstrate the full extent of human expansion throughout the galaxy. Hidden colonies and military installations that had operated in secret for decades would reveal themselves and begin normal operations. The galaxy would learn that humanity had been among them far longer than anyone had suspected. Captain Dan Clark led a squadron of human ships to the Council's primary military shipyard at Rigel 7 with orders to conduct a peaceful but unmistakable demonstration of human capabilities. The shipyard was one of the most heavily defended installations in Council space, protected by automated defense platforms and a permanent garrison of military vessels. Council engineers considered it absolutely impregnable against any conceivable attack. Clark's ships approached the facility using quantum phase technology that allowed them to slip in and out of normal space at will. The shipyard's defensive systems detected human vessels on their sensors, but could not establish target locks on ships that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Council defenders found themselves facing an enemy that could appear and disappear at will while remaining completely immune to retaliation. The demonstration lasted exactly 1 hour, during which human ships surrounded every major installation at the shipyard while remaining effectively untouchable. Council forces launched interceptor squadrons and activated every defensive system at their disposal, but could not engage targets that phased out of normal space whenever weapons were aimed at them. The humans had complete control of the battlefield, without firing a single shot. General Patricia Williams coordinated similar demonstrations at key Council installations throughout the galaxy, as human forces revealed the true extent of their infiltration into alien territory. Military bases that had operated for centuries without detecting any sign of human presence suddenly found themselves surrounded by advanced human vessels. Research facilities that considered themselves completely secure discovered that their activities had been observed and recorded by invisible human operatives for decades. The psychological impact of these revelations was devastating to Council morale and confidence. Military commanders who had built their careers on assumptions of technological superiority found themselves facing opponents who surpassed them in every measurable category. Intelligence services that prided themselves on comprehensive surveillance of galactic affairs discovered that an entire interstellar civilization had been operating under their noses without detection. Commander Ryan Hayes began the process of revealing humanity's hidden colonies throughout the galaxy. Settlements that had remained completely invisible to Council observation for over a decade suddenly appeared on alien sensors as their cloaking systems were deactivated. Terraforming projects that had transformed hostile worlds into garden planets became visible for the first time. Industrial facilities that had been producing advanced technology in secret began broadcasting their locations openly. The revelation that humanity had established 17 thriving colonies in systems that Council surveys had classified as uninhabited forced a complete reassessment of galactic demographics. Human population estimates jumped from 7 billion primitives confined to a single world to over 50 billion citizens spread across multiple star systems. The species that Council leaders had planned to place under protective custody was actually larger and more widespread than most established galactic civilizations. Dr. Amy Foster's research teams began sharing selective technological data with species that chose to establish independent diplomatic relations with Earth. Nations and governments that broke away from Council authority found themselves offered defense, pacts and technology exchanges that provided significant advantages over their former allies. Human scientific knowledge proved to be centuries ahead of Council understanding in several key areas. The quantum drive technology that allowed human ships to phase in and out of normal space revolutionized interstellar travel for species brave enough to ally themselves with Earth. Communication systems based on quantum entanglement provided instantaneous contact across any distance. Medical advances developed by human researchers offered cures for diseases that had plagued alien populations for millennia. President Lisa Carter addressed the galaxy from the Oval Office, flanked by holographic displays showing human ships and colonies throughout local space. Her message was broadcast on every known frequency and translated into hundreds of galactic languages by human linguists who had spent decades studying alien civilizations. The speech would reshape interstellar politics overnight by offering an alternative to Council hegemony. Humanity seeks peaceful relations with all species willing to engage us as equals. We will defend ourselves and our allies against any aggression. The age of Council dominance is over. The age of choice has begun. Every species in this galaxy now has the option to determine its own future, without interference from those who would claim authority over others. Earth offers partnership to any who desire it and protection to any who need it. The offer of protection carried significant weight given humanity's demonstrated military superiority over Council forces. Species that had chafed under alien rule for centuries suddenly saw an opportunity to achieve independence with powerful allies to guarantee their freedom. Resistance movements that had operated in secret for decades began making contact with human representatives to discuss coordination of independence efforts. Ambassador Zethkari found himself in an impossible position as his own species began to question their membership in the Council organization. The Voltan Empire had joined the galactic community centuries ago, believing that cooperation with more advanced species would benefit their civilization. The revelation that an even more advanced species had been observing and judging the Council for decades forced a complete re-evaluation of that decision. Zethkari requested a private meeting with human representatives on Luna Base to discuss the possibility of Voltan independence from Council authority. The conversation that followed would have been unthinkable just weeks earlier, when he had been preparing to help implement protective custody over the supposedly primitive humans of Earth. Now he found himself seeking protection from the species he had planned to subjugate. Admiral Jake Morrison met with the former Council loyalist in a conference room overlooking Earth's blue oceans. The human admiral was gracious and professional as he explained humanity's position on galactic affairs. Earth had no desire to replace the Council as a galactic hegemon, but would not tolerate the continued oppression of species that sought their independence. Humanity would protect any civilization that chose freedom over subjugation. The negotiations that followed established the framework for a new galactic order based on voluntary cooperation rather than imposed authority. Species could choose their own paths and form alliances based on mutual benefit rather than fear of superior force. The Council's power structure began to crumble as member civilizations realized they had alternatives to alien dominance. Colonel Steve Morgan led human forces as they established permanent bases throughout the galaxy to protect newly independent species from Council retaliation. The 1,000 ships that had revealed themselves at Earth became the foundation of a defensive network that spanned dozens of star systems. Any attempt by Council forces to punish rebellious members would face immediate intervention by technologically superior human fleets. The transformation of galactic politics proceeded with remarkable speed as species after species declared independence from Council authority. Some chose to join defensive alliances with Earth, while others simply wanted to be left alone to develop their own civilizations without interference. Humanity supported both choices while making it clear that aggressive actions against independent species would not be tolerated. Within 6 months of humanity's revelation, the Galactic Council had lost over half its membership to independence movements. The remaining member species found themselves part of a much smaller and less influential organization that could no longer claim to speak for the galaxy. The age of imposed unity had ended, and the age of voluntary cooperation had begun. The 1,000 ships in Earth orbit became a permanent reminder that sometimes the most dangerous enemies are the ones who remain silent until they are ready to speak. Humanity had spent 30 years watching and learning while building the strength necessary to challenge galactic tyranny. When the moment came to act, they had done so with overwhelming force and absolute success. The galaxy would never again underestimate the power of patience combined with preparation.